You're listening to a Comics XF podcast.
X-Men. Get it!
Hey everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of Battle of the Atom. This is your weekly X-Men podcast, where we rank every story from A to Z.
I'm Adam.
And I'm Zach. And Adam.
Zach, question for you. Have you ever, seriously considered just booting me from this show and getting a different co-host?
From time to time. I'm sure you've done the same. I wouldn't respect you if you didn't do the same, honestly.
Jeez, the thought does not enter my mind often, but, I just have to wonder that occasionally you might just want a roster shake up on this particular show. I don't know.
Sometimes I think you want to replace me with Anna. I don't know, but...
Zach, you are the host of this show. You are the leader of this show. So
you say leader of this show. There's only two of us. I just made the spreadsheet 7 years ago.
Listen, this is a partnership, and the only reason I'm doing this is a bit because this is the theme of this week's episode.
This is the theme of this week's episode. It's people. The episode. Here's how these episodes work. It's someone pays us $5 on patreon.com/BattleOfTheAtom. They reach deep down, hearts and pocketbooks and the like. And there are folks like Robert who said, I want you to cover this story, and I want you to find two other stories that are about arguments about team rosters.
I love when we get a good challenge like this. And I think the three stories we picked here are perfect for this.
We had to dig around to find some things, but I think we found three stories that are, at minimum, very interesting to talk about.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
In our first story today, the explicit request is New Mutants Volume 3, Number 5, Debrief.
Oh boy.
This is the Zeb Wells New Mutants with pencils by Zachary Baldus.
Oh, well, we have referenced this issue before in the episode where we covered the first four issues of Zeb Wells New Mutants. But we didn't actually rank this particular issue.
We didn't talk about it in depth.
No, this is the aftermath of Legion's return, in which I believe Karma was stuck inside Legion's, multi-personality brain, right?
Yeah, for a bit.
Yeah. So this is kind of the debriefing session. I don't know how seriously you could take this issue, though, because the artwork is so strange by Zachary Baldus.
And I want to say this. I have seen contemporary and current work of Baldus.
Mm-hmm.
And by current, that's 15 years of improving on your craft. So
Sure.
And it looks, honestly, I'm scrolling through his Instagram right now. His current work looks fantastic. It is truly great painted work with incredible line work under it. It is strong. And his contemporary work to this was pretty good. And then there's this, which I have described more than once as the worst looking X-Men issue of all time.
It has this weird pastel quality to it. And all of the characters look either completely off model or very, very strange and elongated in ways that I feel like Baldus is trying to do a Sienkiewicz and failing miserably. Because
he is actively trying to do something.
Yeah.
There is, I can tell that there is style to it. And some underlying level of talent in his artistry. However, this feels like something that you should have saved for your sketchbook and then realized that, hey, this isn't working. Instead of doing commercial work with this, there is a panel on this.
Are you going to pull up the magic wink panel?
Yeah, I'm looking at that right now.
Yeah, describe
It's-
that to the listeners.
So it is a page opens up, top like 2/3 or top third is 3 vertical panels. It's Karma sitting outside of Kavita Rao's office, and Ileana walking out of that office. The door opens, and then Karma looking up at her, and Ileana giving the most deranged wink that I've ever seen in my life.
It is
Her
really,
face,
really something.
her face is like her filler has migrated, but it's somehow migrated her eyes away from the rest of her body.
It's really strange, and she is not the only character that just looks really weird. There is a version of Cyclops at the beginning of this issue. Basically, the plot here, aside from Karma debriefing with Rao, is that Danny Moonstar learns from Cyclops, kind of accidentally, that Sam doesn't want her on the New Mutants. And
Yes,
Danny is pissed about
Danny
this.
does not have powers, and the New Mutants just got done fighting a god. So while Sam is being patronizing, I can also see his point of view of like, Danny, we're going to like, we were all friends with Doug. Like, you remember Doug, right? I just don't want that to happen again. Because you're really cool, but we're fighting demons and stuff.
Yeah, and I just to stick with the drawings of Cyclops for a second. Baldus draws him as the goofiest guy. Like he does not
Goofier
look...
than his Dr. Nemesis.
Oh, his Dr. Nemesis is wild too. It's like, this wide-faced, almost like Anthony Hopkins looking dude. I mean, it is bizarre what he thinks these characters look like.
There is
His sunspot. Like, while
his sunspot's wild.
his sunspot actually looks like a human being, but like definitely doesn't look like Bobby.
His Karma gets crazy in some points.
Mhm.
He draws a rogue that is
So weird, right?
unhinged.
Stick figure. It's really bizarre.
Now, here's the thing. There is when Danny and Sam finally like come to a head about this.
Yes.
There is a page or two there where like his art style kind of comes through,
Mhm.
and he is doing like, it's like 2 punches, but they are very bold and dynamic, and they work on the page, and like you can see like there is a, while most of the issue feels stilted, there is a sense of movement and energy to that action that
Well,
it tells you he is a solid artist.
and I don't want to disregard the beginning of this issue either, in which it's not the way I would draw Warlock, but there's this little, bookends of Warlock interacting with, I guess, some military planes, and then
Where he makes friends with missiles.
yeah, and then at the end of the issue,
Those missiles become crabs later.
the end of the issue introduces Necrotia and what happens to Doug, right? So like,
Right.
it's actually not a bad Warlock. It's vastly different than the Adam Kubert Warlock that's on the cover, which looks incredible.
Right.
But the crux of the story is just bizarre to me, and that is that Danny wants to be treated like one of the team. And what does that mean to Danny? Is that she wants Sam to feel like he can punch her, which is weird because like he enters the room, she socks him, and he's like, okay, great. And I realize that this is a commentary on her having lost her powers and everything, but it is just such a bizarre sequence to see Sam Guthrie feel the need to punch Danny Moonstar in the face.
Okay, that part, them just sparring is one thing.
But they're not sparring, they're just fight clubbing, and it's weird.
Yeah, but I mean, there are panels on the top of, like inset panels over the top of them that is very much them sparring and showing that, hey, this has been going on for a bit. But then they choose to draw Sam blocking a punch and then counter punching with a big whack as a panel covers up the actual punch because they know they shouldn't show Sam just decking a lady.
Yeah.
And then, like, literally, the feather in her hair flies off because he punches her so hard. And I'm like, I get what you guys are trying to do. This is undercutting it pretty hard.
Yeah. It doesn't help back up the story. So overall, I think this is a very ugly issue of comic books. And I don't think, I mean, really the resolution is right. Danny can stay on the team. Great. That's fine. But, you know, I don't know. I don't know what to do with this comic. You know what I mean?
I don't think it's a very good comic.
I don't want to look at it.
We have said, like, there are parts of New Mutants Volume 3 that we have ranked highly on this. The Rise and Fall of the New Mutants is really good. And Spider-Man aside, which is a book I don't care about reading, I liked a lot of Zeb Wells stuff.
We do have a big old list, Zach, that we do have the first 4 issues of this particular volume on, and I think we should probably take a stab at ranking this.
Yeah, so a couple things about our list. It's big. It's an it's a list, and we've been ranking every X-Men story from best to worst, with the best story being House of X Powers of 10, the 200th best story being Assault on Weapon Plus, the 400th best story being What If Magic, the 600th best story being X-Men Regenesis, the 800th best story being the time Peter Corpo showed up for the first time in Hulk.
Nice.
And then it's the 29.9 World Tomorrow at the bottom of the list, which is 942. That's too many X-Men stories on our road to 1,000.
It sure is. It sure is. We have the first 4 issues of this all the way down at what do we have this down at? 673.
To put that in perspective, we have the Fall and Rise of the New Mutants up at 138.
Oh yeah. I don't think this issue is as good as those first 4 issues.
They aren't, and that's a shame because those are not great issues at all.
No, they're not.
Hey, how do you feel about it compared to at 686, the time the New Mutants went to Asgard?
Hey,
again.
As long
Forever.
as long as you know that story is and as unwieldy it still has some pretty fun Brett Blevins art. So I would give that the advantage. This is a very hideous, ugly comic.
How do you feel about this compared to at 697, Exiled, New Mutants Journey into Mystery?
Ooh, I think we're about on the same page here because I don't remember liking that very much.
You really didn't. You disliked it more than I did.
No. So at least this is tough. This is tough. I'm looking down the list and I'm seeing comics that I think are better than this.
Tell me one that you think is better than this.
Like it's 712 is New Mutants Fall of the Mutants 59 to 61. I kind of feel like that's better than this, even though it's kind of a mess.
But that has so much bird brain.
I know. So okay.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that there's take off the rose-colored glasses. There's a lot of bird brain in that.
Yeah. All right. So we know we're kind of in this area though. Is this better than at 701, that time that Magneto got turned into a baby?
No.
It's not as good. Okay.
Not as good as that. It's
probably better than the X-Men 12 and 13 with Hazard.
Yeah, but let's put it under that Exile story.
All right, great. So this is going to be our new 704, New Mutants Volume 3, number 5. A very ugly comic book with a strange conflict resolution between Sam and Danny that I'm glad they worked out.
Loved about us, again, like, no shame on him. Most of us just don't have our bad stuff published.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Everybody's got to start somewhere, right? I would like to go to a book that, when we've talked about it in the past on this show, I was not a big fan of, but I thought this was actually kind of a good arc. This is Generation Hope 13 to 17.
I'm a little surprised at your reaction to this because I definitely had a different one.
Okay. I'm not
You
saying
thought
this
I would
is,
have something more insightful to say than that.
well,
and
I'm
I
not
don't.
saying this is like the best thing ever, but I was surprised because I didn't hate it. And I remember reading Generation Hope and being like, oh God, I don't like any of these characters. I'm not sure I still do. I'm not sure I'd like any of them now, but I at least
I
thought
like
this
I
had
like
more.
Zero
Yeah,
and Hope.
well, hey, Zero has a lot of things to do in this particular arc. Um, because we are talking about lineups, and this one is interesting the way that there's a little bit of a shakeup and a mutiny on this team, which is interesting.
Yeah, well, so I'll say, in terms of the shake-up part of it, Generation Hope is coming out of the Schism event where ID Okinawa was a pretty central character.
Right.
In fact, you get a page from Generation Hope in the end of Schism
Mm-hmm.
or in Regenesis,
Yep.
explicitly because they're like, no, this is important to everything we're doing, and it's ID leaving the team, but very specifically ID leaving the team because Transonic pulls out a gun on Hope and says she's leaving the team.
Mm.
Because like the tension between Hope and the Lights has been building for this entire run. And then at the same time, Kieran Gillen leaves this book and goes over and does Uncanny X-Men,
Mm-hmm.
which leaves it without kind of its central person. It also means that Hope is on the main team now and is going to be, I don't know, in a weird spot with Generation Hope. So they bring in James Asmus to do this, to finish this run out. Asmus is probably best known to X-Men people as the guy who did the Marvel Now Gambit series.
Oh, okay.
But honestly had been, those guys that for a while would like jump around anthology and like, be on the edges of breaking in.
Yep.
He was that for a little bit.
Yeah.
But this is his first like ongoing.
Yeah, and this is part of the post-schism regenesis stuff, so it's branded that way. And I do think what I appreciated about this was that it did still feel like it was connected to the rest of the Utopia storytelling in an interesting way. Um, Hope is trying to get the team to go to Pakistan to follow up on a new mutant that pops up on Cerebra. And the Cuckoos are basically like, no, you're not allowed to go to that one. And she's like, well, I don't know what you mean. We're going anyway. And the team pops over there. And it turns out that this quote unquote new mutant, who this is the part that I do not like, is working for some kind of for-profit chaos freedom fighter terrorist people.
The
Yeah,
Pakistani militant people, which is
it's
weird. And the dude's written in a way that you would, the guy, Jin Billion,
Jin Billion.
Jin Billion, who runs this, I don't know, like a
They're
mob.
like mercenaries. They're
Kind of.
in it for money, and
they're being Pakistani terrorists on the China border, which I don't know enough about China and Pakistan to have any real insightful commentary on it. I can just say that when the surprise at the end of 13 is Sebastian Shaw shows up and rips off his shirt and is wearing a suicide vest, and also he doesn't look like Sebastian Shaw because he has a beard now,
right.
and it just looks like a Pakistani militant.
It's not a good look.
It's a weird thing for then Jin Billion to be written in a way that, like, I would say is racist, but I couldn't tell you how.
Well, he's written in a way that is both smart, but also occasionally in broken English. So
He's doing that, and
it's weird.
It always comes off as someone making fun of someone for not speaking English.
So this part of the story does not work for me. What is more interesting is this idea that when they get back with Sebastian Shaw, Emma Frost is pissed. Cyclops is even more pissed. He's like, this is the guy. We can't have this guy around. And Hope is basically like, wait a minute. This guy doesn't know who he is.
He got brainwashed. Yeah.
Right. He has no memories of where he's been or who he is. He's a blank slate. And from there, we're starting to get into this conversation about what is Hope's actual influence over these characters.
Right.
And we're also getting, I thought this was kind of fun, is that Zero, well, at least on first blush, it looks like he has fallen in love with Martha, No Girl. But
she gets a cool body.
She gets this sick, like, kind of Zero body. So she kind of looks like an alien. I thought that part was really cool. But then it turns out that Zero is using everybody by detaching pieces of himself into their brains and modifying how they're thinking about things. So he becomes the ultimate hypocrite. He wants to kill Hope because she's controlling everybody, but honestly, he's doing it by doing exactly what he thinks Hope is doing.
I like the argument that's going on of like, autonomy and all that. And it makes for an interesting thing with Hope. I don't think it plays out as well as you want it to. One, because there's a weird thing with just like Bliss and a couple other random mutants who are kind of fighting Hope and the kids and kind of not. And kind of with Zero and then kind of not. And you're never really like, it's never clear what's going on. Like, why is Litterbug here?
All right. Here's why I like this part. Is
it because Litterbug's here?
First of all, Litterbug is in this story, so points for Litterbug. We also just have
negative points for Dragoness, though. I don't like Dragoness.
Hey, she's there so that when she confronts, I think it's Transonic, is like, hey, weren't you on the MLF? Like, why are you lecturing me? Right?
Okay, but of all the MLF people,
but yeah, so we
didn't send their best.
No, so we've got Litterbug, Bliss, who at least doesn't look like Jean Grey. Props for that.
Yeah, but it's Bliss.
We've got Dragoness, and I think the other one is Random, which is pretty funny.
It's right. And Erg. Erg is there.
Oh, right, Erg is there. So what I do like about this is this idea of sort of the difference between who gets page time and who doesn't. And these characters are basically arguing that, like, oh, so you're part of Hope's little club? Isn't it nice to have like nice little bedrooms and stuff? And it's implied that like they're in some sort of shanty somewhere on the island, which it makes me laugh because of course we care more about the central characters of the book and we don't care about these forgotten mutants who also do happen to be living here and are out of the story. So I thought that was kind of funny.
That's a weird thing in that Zero gets to them eventually. The other thing that I think is weird is that the Sebastian Shaw thing. After he's on the team, he does nothing, which is just weird.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you went through a lot of effort to put Sebastian Shaw on your team for him to do nothing, except for build tension between Emma and Hope.
Yeah, I think what could make it more interesting is at the end of this story, Hope is because Hope didn't know who Sebastian Shaw was, which is weird. I mean, you would think that she would.
It feels like Cable would have been like, so anyway, there's this guy.
Here, let me give you the synopsis of Dark Phoenix Saga.
Let me tell you about your grandmother real quick.
Yes, but somehow she has no idea. So Cyclops gives her the dossier on Sebastian Shaw, and the last thing that happens here is that she gives it to mind-wiped Sebastian, is basically like, hey, your choice. Do you want to know who you were or not? And I do like the idea that there could be this character who develops a completely different personality. I know this is not where they went with the story, but develops a completely different personality than the one we knew, and then has to deal with the fact that based on his history is still going to be this outcast.
What I do think is weird is that because Hope is the protagonist of this book, it paints Emma as the villain for not wanting this guy to live next door to her. Oh, this guy who caused so much trauma in her life.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't quite completely work, right? Like,
yeah, that's the thing. It's like, if you care about Sebastian Shaw just as a character, specifically, if you are building off of the arc that just happened in the Fraction stuff with Shaw,
Mhm.
and when he gets dumped there, then you're gonna be like, Hope, you're making it really hard for us to take your side right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do think that Asmus is playing with this idea of like, well, should we trust Hope? Like, we've been told we should. And, there's all of this, push that she's the mutant messiah and stuff like that. And Asmus is like, well, I don't know. Has she actually done anything that like we should, and the character's kind of wrestling with that, all of her team are like, well, she did help us, but now we're not quite happy with how it's being handled, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there was a lot of fun things that were being played with here. I also think that especially the last two issues are drawn by Takeshi Miyazawa. I liked that. I liked the tone of the book
Under Miyazawa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the other issues maybe aren't as strong. You have
I
Tim
think
Green.
the Abraham Robertson stuff is pretty promising. The Tim Green issue in the middle does nothing for me.
Yeah, I would agree. That's probably the weak end of this. But if you're a fan of Zero, who popped up in Dark X-Men recently, I mean, this is a fun character.
This is about the best that Zero gets, because you get him being an active antagonist, an active participant in the story, having like, he's a very three-dimensional character for what he is.
Oh, absolutely.
He's got a lot of conflicting things going on within him.
Credit to Asmus, you get duped into thinking that he's like head over heels in love with Martha.
Because he's kind of like this weird guy for a lot of time. So him acting like, oh, I'm in love with the first brain image RIC. Aren't I
right.
kooky?
Yeah. But, when we actually get the twist of what it is that he's really doing, it worked for me. I'm not saying this is great. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm sure that in Gillen's hand, a story like this could probably be better executed. But I was engaged in a way that I was not. Every issue of this that I have read, I mean, there's only 17 issues, but
you haven't read the good ones is the thing. I don't know how to tell you that. Like, we've read the first 4 issues of this for the podcast,
yeah,
right?
I didn't like those, and I was expecting to not like these, and I did. So
go in.
I'll read the middle part.
Read the middle part. Read 5 through 12. They're
Okay.
really. It's a Jamie McKelvey, Kieran Gillen thing. Like,
oh, McKelvey draws it?
McKelvey draws a good chunk
right.
of it.
Maybe I will check it out.
At least a handful of the best issues
are
with McKelvey.
Yeah.
Go, Adam, just knock it out. Just knock out the middle chunk of Generation Hope, and you'll be like, okay, it's pretty good.
Yeah. Well, hey, I don't think, no matter if I read the whole volume or not, I don't think I'm ever going to really get on board with some of these characters, right?
Oh, I'm never
going to Primal, forget it.
Okay,
terrible character.
Again, read those middle ones, because Gillen does some really fun stuff with Tion. I don't want to say he's a one-note character, because he's a very explicitly 3-note character. But he does the same 3 things over and over, and it's a more fun concept to think about than it is to actually have to write month in and month out.
Yeah, he's quite boring. Transonic.
Transonic as a character, like, she never gets better than the part where she pulls that gun on Hope.
Yeah.
Velocidad's kind of nothing in this.
Velocidad is such a wasted opportunity too, because Velocidad is the idea that he's not fast. He's speeding through time. So he's aging every time he uses his powers. That is really fun. And
it is, but it can only go one direction.
But his character is really dumb. Like, it's just an annoying teenage boy. So it I don't know. Anyway,
it is weird because they bring Pixie onto the team because he kind of cheated on Hope with Pixie, but they weren't really dating, and it's a whole thing. And Pixie does nothing. So why is she on the team?
Zach, we have talked about more than just the first 4 issues, because we did cover Generation Hope 10 and 10 to 12, which was the Schism issues. So I do have, some evidence to back this up.
That's fair. Those other 5 issues that Kieran Gillen wrote that you haven't read are pretty good.
Okay. All right. So we have the Schism issues at 472. And we have the first 4 issues at 545. I think this is better than the first 4 issues. I don't think it's as good as the Schism issues, probably.
Okay. So what's around there?
Well, we are at 472 for Generation Hope 10 to 12. And I'm just looking down and around the list. Yeah, okay. You just highlighted the 198.
Yes. I would say the 198 is probably better.
I would agree.
Overall.
Yep. I don't think this is as good as X Factor Forever at 490.
It's probably not as good as the Burnt Offering from Cable and Deadpool.
Ooh, we're working our way down. Is this better or worse than Damon Lindelof's Ultimate Wolverine versus Hulk at 498?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't think we could, in good conscience, put this above Uncanny X-Men 142 at 497, though.
No. It needs to be 498.
All right. So our new 498 is Generation Hope number 13 to 17. And Zach, we have one more story of roster conflict. What are we talking about here?
The most conflicted roster in comic book history.
Well, it's hard when they're not staying alive.
It's X-Force.
Not the X-Force you're thinking of.
No, it's the Ecstatics X-Force.
That is right. We are talking about X-Force Volume 1, 124 to 129. And man, this was a joy to go back to. I had not read this in a while, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, because here's the thing. This is the end of the X-Force run of Ecstatics.
Mm-hmm.
It opens with it's by Peter Milligan. Mike Allred does the middle chunk of issues here, but there is a prelude and a finale that are done by Darwin Cook and Duncan Fegredo. And Bud, that's a murderer's row. If you have to have 3 artists on an arc, wow. What a 1, 2, 3, boom. Get it out of here.
This Darwin Cook issue alone, I mean, talk about somebody who complements Mike Allred's style, right? They're both kind of drawing in a similar quality. Darwin,
there's a poppy cartoony quality.
Cartoony quality that really works with these characters. Darwin is kind of leaning even more into that almost Bruce Timm style of cartoon quality to it. You can kind of see these being animated characters. And yet the story that is told in 124, which is the basically the kind of origin story, the teenage years of You Go Girl, Edie Sawyer, is really dramatic. It is lovely. And there is at least one page of this that is so beautiful and almost haunting that I was like, God, I'm glad I'm rereading this. I just was so over the moon about it. But we should probably set up what's happening with the book at this point.
So they've had continual fights with their manager, Spike Freeman.
Not to be confused with the Spike. Darian Elliott.
No one except for us remembers that they did bring Spike from the X-Men Evolution immediately into the comics as a completely different dude.
Yeah. The guy who is how do I put this delicately? Spike is used so interestingly here in these issues as someone who is really discontent with the presence of Tyke Alucard's the anarchist on the team as the other black guy.
So
Um,
here's the thing. I think someone who's not a white British guy should probably be doing this story,
I was
but no one else was in 2002. So it's interesting that Peter Milligan, anarchist Tyke, is one of the like main characters of the book, because really the leads of the book are Edie and Tyke and Guy,
right.
orphan, anarchist, and you go girl.
Mhm.
And positioning Tyke as someone who has been quote unquote the black guy on the team for so long, and then but is very much a softie and plays a character in front of the cameras
Right.
in a way that he doesn't. He has a lot more emotional internality. And then you get Spike, Darian Elliott, who is very much in the 50 Cent early 2000s thug mold. And it's a weird conflict for Peter Milligan to be doing, especially because his overarching story for Tyke has been, am I black enough? Like, am I black on the inside? That's been his story for Tyke since the beginning.
Yeah, and then it comes to a head when Peter Milligan actually uses the plot line to start criticizing the carceral state, and the X-Force team is sent into space to go basically kill a bunch of death row prisoners who all happen to be people of color. And the CIA is basically like, well, we experimented on these guys and you got to go kill them. And when they get up there, the storyline becomes, well, which one of these two black guys on your team is quote unquote black enough? Right. And Spike is like, well, that's me. You know, this tight guy is like, you know, white on the inside. They call him a coconut, I think. Right.
Yes.
And all of this is fascinating. It's also like, Peter Milligan, should you be writing this story?
Probably not, but Peter Milligan's of that British group that is being very transgressive and pushing the boundaries of stuff. And at least, you think, for being a 2002 comic, it walks that like, it doesn't step into anything overt that it could otherwise do. Like, it knows what it's doing when it makes Spike be who he is.
I think despite the authorship, it is still quite interesting.
Also, if someone did inform me later that actually no, it's deeply racist because of reasons X, Y, and Z, I would not bat an eye. I'd be like, okay, yeah, you're probably not wrong.
I am
like, I could
neither of us
criticism of this comic.
We are two white guys, and we are both.
Everyone loves the parts of X-Men comics when me and Adam after like, we're both two straight white guys here. But so
I think both of us can at least acknowledge that there is a problem with Peter Milligan writing this kind of a story. You know what I mean? It's meant to be transgressive in the same way that he is. He's got two of his other characters, which are Fat and
Vivisector.
Oh, Vivisector. I always forget.
Fat, who is also name. An interesting third wheel in this dynamic, because Fat is a redneck guy, like trailer trash guy, who wants to act black in a way that was very prevalent in 2002. Like, it's always white guys wanting to be cool and black has always been a thing, but I feel like, at least in my life, it hit a peak like in 2002.
It was very much part of the culture, right? Not the culture, but of the zeitgeist, right? Like of the Eminem.
No, Zeitgeist is dead. He's a different character.
I know, it's not, you know what I mean. But you know,
Milligan already know what they're doing here.
Yes. And Milligan is also playing around with this idea with Miles and Fat, and the idea that like they are, you know, falling in love with each other, but at the same time,
after faking being gay for the cameras,
yes,
they are
actually
Fat is finding out he's actually gay and doesn't know how to deal with that, because how does that deal with his being a tough white guy who is street and hood and also being gay and also being lower class? Like, there is a lot Milligan's not just doing one thing. He is subverting his own subversions most of the time. And that's why X-Force and X-Statix is so interesting to read.
Yeah, because you can look at the book and say, okay, well, we're just surface level dealing with this high concept of characters for hire, characters that are gonna, go off and die on missions and are easily replaced by like they have these they talk about this in the last issue, sort of these minor leagues where these teams are
Yes.
fighting each other to sort of get up to the majors, which is really funny to
Including
me.
a guy named Arlo Summers.
Yes, who is like, what is he made of, like toxic waste or something? I forget what his
Yeah,
deal
and he's
is.
in a space. He's
The-
in a spaceman
The
suit.
fifth Summers brother.
I
But
love it.
each one of these characters has a deep backstory. Like this first issue, 124, gives this You Go Girl backstory, which is all about her trying to refocus her powers. Is it because she's abusing drugs? Is it because she is traumatized by her past? We're not sure. And the orphan takes her back to meet who turns out to be her daughter, who
Right.
is also being, everybody in the public knows that this child is publicly known as her sister, and even the child does not know who her real mother is.
Right.
So like each one of these characters has this very developed and dramatic backstory, whereas the pop adventures that they go on are zany and more in line with maybe what you might see in Mike Allred's Madman, right? Like it's interesting how he balances that with the writing. So once You Go Girl has her act together, right, which may or may not because of dealing with her trauma, and maybe because she found a new drug of choice, we don't know. They get launched into this final mission, which takes up these last couple of issues, where they have to go after these death row mutants.
Well, they have to go after these death row mutants, knowing that one of them is going to die.
Oh, right, yes, because they go to try and recruit Dead Girl from a cemetery.
Freaking love Dead Girl, by the way. Dead Girl,
Girl is great.
There's a lot of really good Mike Allred designs. Like You Go Girl's fantastic. Venus de Milo is top notch. Dead Girl might be the best one that he does.
She's like borderline madman, right? Like very in that realm, in that universe. But this vision of death comes and points at Orphan, You Go Girl, and Tyke, and is basically like, well, who's he pointing to? And so we get this issue where after essentially Spike betrays them and joins up with the inmates, right? Because the whole thing here is that the CIA has hired them to go up there and lose so that the CIA can come in and win and look like the heroes, and then they don't have to take responsibility for experimenting on these prisoners, right? So again, levels. But our three main characters get shunted off into this, like, I don't know, it's like a weird space Cadillac or so. Oh no, it's a satellite, and inside of it is a space Cadillac that's only going to fit two of them and dupe. So they have to roll the dice to figure out who is going to, sacrifice themselves so that the other two can come back. And it turns out that Tyke is an expert at throwing dice from gambling. So he knows exactly what number he will get every single time, rolls a 1 so that the other two can go back, and eventually get saved. So we don't lose Tyke, but it's the drama is there.
The drama is there. And what Milligan does is, in a book that has been a revolving door of characters, and will continue to be a revolving door of characters here, he goes for a gut punch. He switches this to, there's a point where, oh no, one of these people is really Spike, and one of them is one of the insane alien things, and you don't know what's going on, and there's a big battle. Spike dies in this. But in the crossfire of all that, you find out that You Go Girl was fatally wounded.
Right. It's a
after.
bait and switch, right? You're like,
Yeah,
oh, they survived. Great. And no, she's dead. And when people die in this comic, they die.
and you go girl, who has been since 113 the probably main, like the main consistent character of this book.
Mhm.
Losing her hurts for the reader. It hurts for Tyke. It hurts for Guy. And it sets the stage for the rest of the book from here.
Right.
And they don't know what to do next, and it builds up the like orphans feeling of what's the friggin' point of doing all of this? Like, I'm famous, so what?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah, I mean,
what are we getting out of this? And
we're
his
introducing
tension
this
with, yeah,
and then we're introducing this idea of him playing Russian roulette and
well, which he's been doing since the beginning,
oh, that's true. Okay, never mind. That's not a new concept.
but it becomes a big thing during this, because he tells Spike Freeman, their producer, he says, "Play with me. Look, you're friggin' throwing our lives around like this."
Right. And Spike Freeman's like, okay, I'll do it, and does it. And it's like, oh, okay. This is
And
like
you have to take on one hand here. You have to see Spike Friedman's unwell,
Mhm.
but then you have to be like, he's unwell. Guy's also all these people are really deeply screwed up people,
Yes.
aren't they?
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. But that's what makes the story so engaging. I think that balance between the pop sensibilities of what Allred and Laura Allred are bringing to this book. The art is just absolutely gorgeous. The
Truly incredible stuff.
Darwin Cook issue. I mentioned this issue where this page where they're that's just stunning, where they're kind of looking
Mhm.
up at the stars, and it's so beautiful. And then it gets a callback because Edie basically asks not to be brought back to Earth and be buried there. She wants to be buried among the stars, and they
Mhm.
launch her body into space. It's just, I don't know, there it's this thing where Milligan is from the start of this story trying to tell you, oh, this is something flippant and silly, and yet then he still manages to get you to care about these characters.
That's the thing. That's all you have to do for a good comic, is make you care about the characters.
Mhm. Yep, it works really well, and I also think it's really well done in the final issue of 129, setting up what is eventually going to become Ecstatics, because Edie has whispered that she thinks this should be the new name of the team, um, and
It
that
turns out they may not have the rights to call themselves X-Force. It's a funny bit.
right. And even in that last issue, it's not Alred, it's Duncan Fegredo, but it's drawn incredibly well, and the drama is like dialed up to 10. It's really good.
I mean, yeah, but it's Duncan Fegredo. Like, that's not that much of a downgrade from Mike Allred.
No, it's a stylistic shift, but
It's a stylistic shift,
still
and
incredibly great art.
they let Duncan Fegredo. They're like, well, we've got him for an issue. What do we want to? Let's let him draw some weird monsters.
Yeah, who's that guy? Oh, that's a guy that's a tree. Like that guy's made of antimatter or whatever. This guy's made of like bedwetting, and it's like, okay. Sure.
Oh no, it's the guy who did the Storm and the Fury. I know that was later, but still.
Oh boy. So I like this a lot, Zach. This is really good stuff.
Here's the thing. As I read it, I was like, man, there's a lot here, but boy, do I enjoy X-Force and Ecstatics. I do wonder if there's like, if you were not alive in 2002,
Mm-hmm.
if you would enjoy these comics.
I wonder as well, because this has a sensibility to it that is very much kind of the moment. And here's what I want to resist. Here's what I want to resist. I think there's a reading of this comic where you could say this could never be made today because of cancel culture.
No, they literally, to be clear, they literally made it again last year. Like they did.
Yeah. And
it was very 2002 last year.
Yes.
Did you read all of that?
I did not.
I
I
kind of want to
started
read.
to, but
I kind of want to read it all in one sitting because I feel like if you just pick up from the last issue of Ecstatics
Mhm.
and go right into it, it wouldn't miss a beat.
I think that's
You would have to already be in the same 2002, 2003 mindset.
Mhm.
Like it's not novel criticisms or anything like that.
Yeah. But I think, the more accurate reading of it is that it is of the moment, in that it is struggling with how to talk about these things at a moment that a lot of people were,
Right.
So I think it's more part of the conversation of that time, as opposed to, something that is wildly inappropriate or something like that. Like, I don't get that.
No, it is. It's good, and I like Ecstatics a lot.
I still think it's very intelligent. I just think it's really well done.
It's just it's very intelligent. It is just not. How do I want to say this? No, I think it's smart. It's just I think it's very of a moment.
I agree. I think what you might be searching for, and I'm not trying to put words into your mouth, is just that the context around it, right?
Yes.
Like if someone were trying to do something along these lines now, the conversations have changed and matured in different ways. So
like the idea of celebrity and reality show, just as like the core concept,
vastly different.
It's very different the year after Survivor blows up.
Right.
Which I get, like the Real World and stuff was doing reality shows before that.
Mhm.
And this is honestly more informed by the Real World than it is Survivor. But like there was a zeitgeist of reality TV at the time. There was the post 9/11 America that you like. There's a lot.
Yeah.
Of
it's
just
referencing
like,
cultural touch points of those moments. Whereas if this were, why it doesn't necessarily translate perfectly into today is because obviously we live in a different culture.
Yeah.
Things are different. So
this is not as good as the first Ecstatic stuff at 51.
Okay. Do we have any other Ecstatic stuff on
Yeah, we
here?
have the
We have the silent issue on here somewhere, don't we?
No, we don't have the silent issue on here. That will rank very high. We do have the one where Princess Die comes back from the dead.
Die Another Day. That's low though, isn't it? Where is that?
It's at 300 something. It's low for Ecstatics.
Yeah.
We're between those two, I think, though. Like Age of X is at 194, and I think this is better than Age of X.
Oh, definitely.
Is it better or worse than All New Dupe at 175?
Now, All New Dupe was also Darwin Cook, but I do...
No, it's not. It's David LaFontaine. You're thinking of Wolverine Dupe.
Oh. Oops. Where is All New Dupe?
All New Dupe is at 175, and Wolverine Dupe is at 120. I think we're between those two.
I would agree. I think this is better than All New Dupe. This is definitely a top 200 story. It's definitely doing a lot of really great stuff. I would say, would you say this is better or worse than Exterminators at 161?
That's the original Exterminators, and I think it's better.
Okay, I would agree with that. I'm working my way up, and
I think it's better than like Ultimate X-Men 1 through 6, the Tomorrow People.
I would agree with that as well. Oh boy.
At 133 is Excalibur Mojo Mayhem, and I think Mojo Mayhem I think it edges it out, but I couldn't tell you why. And I know that's bad because that's my job as the podcast.
I do think that I don't think this has like last week we were talking about Ladrone Cable. So I don't think it's as high as 122 or 123, which are two Ladrone Cable arcs.
I would say I would put it below Mojo Mayhem at 133.
Okay.
And make it the new 134. Because I do think that this works better than Marvel Team Up 150.
All right. That's a great place for this. Folks never finished that part of the X-Force run, definitely check it out. It is, a time capsule, but it is still incredibly well done.
Yeah, and it's beautiful.
Oh God, the art is just incredible. The all
It's so good.
reds, Darwin
Why have we
Cook.
been blessed with good art recently? We got Ladrone stuff. We got all red stuff.
Am I complaining? I'm not complaining. I love when we have good art. It makes me very happy. So,
Do you know what makes me happy, Adam?
that our roster is still together and that we're still on this podcast as a team.
I guess.
I guess.
We've got a big round number coming up in the near future. And if we ever wanted to shake things up, if we wanted to have our own Regenesis.
Oh my God. Pull an X-Force to Ecstatics.
Do you know how much I would love to be just the you go girl of this situation? Be like, and now I'm gone, off to the wind, never to be seen again.
Well, I don't think our listeners or me want that.
I don't think our listeners or me want that, Adam.
There you go. Who we got to thank?
Oh, we got to thank Robert. Thanks, Robert.
Thank you, Robert.
Patreon.com, $5. You get a pick. Give us $5 and then be nice and say, hey, this comic has good art.
Yeah, keep that good art coming, please.
Just keep us going with the good art.
Make Adam happy.
Make Adam so happy. Hey, bud, what do you want to talk about next? Or what are you doing this week? Anything people need to know about?
No, just, socials, Adam Rec on Blue Sky and Instagram, and Arthur Stacy on Twitter. And Zach, what are we doing next week?
Next week, we are doing comics that are, quote, aggressively dumb but good.
Oh, interesting. Are we gonna spoil what our main feature is, or no? Or we want to hold off?
I'm gonna hold off on it because now I have the option.
I will say, big fan favorite coming up next week. Don't miss it.
Listen, it's gonna be transgressive, positive, and I can't wait. But until then, folks, this has been Battle of the Atom. We hope you survive the experience.
Get it!